Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Sorry, you guys kept complaining you didn't like my videos in black and white, so I read the comments and I'm trying to fix it. So hey, this is going to be kind of more of a vloggy kind of video. I occasionally throw these out there and kind of give my opinions and experiences. Hopefully you guys enjoy these. They tend to, draw quite a bit of comments out, so this is kind of a story I wanted to share with you guys. A lot of you guys have asked me over the years why I've never featured a Panerai watch on the channel. I briefly did that video a couple years ago now, maybe, about are Panerai watches any good? Terrible video, it's just me talking in my car. But, it's a legitimately good question, and a lot of you guys have asked me and I've never really answered the question. So I wanted to create a little bit of a video, explain my philosophy on Panerai, why I've actually spent a lot of time avoiding them, and actually for the longest time I had zero interest in them whatsoever. And maybe this is something you guys can relate to because it's been a very interesting journey for me, and maybe you guys have had similar journeys as well. So I first came across Panerai in the mid-2000s, actually early mid-2000s. And they just started to become popular. Sylvester Stallone had already kind of made them kind of a cool thing in the late 90s. They were starting to catch on a little bit, but they were very much a niche brand. It was still kind of the watch geek's watch. The first time I saw one was it was featured in the movie that Pierce Brosnan was in. He was wearing a Panerai Luminor Daylight. It was a PAM 90 with a power reserve. And I remember the first time I saw the watch, I had no idea what it was. This was still at the infancy of my watch collecting days. And I just recognized that it was a piece that I thought was super cool, but I had no idea what it was. So I started looking into it, and initially I was like, oh my god, I have to have one of these pieces. And the PAM 90 in particular was a grail watch for me for a while. Fast forward a couple years, those of you that may not remember this, Panerais are actually pretty hard to come by for a while. And I used to visit a local tourneo to me all the time growing up, and they never had any Panerais in stock. So to me, it was as exotic to me as like a Patek Philippe or a Vacheron. They even had Pateks in the store, but they never had a Panerai. And so it was one of those watches. I didn't really know a lot about watches. I just saw one, thought it was super cool, and just never thought I'd ever see one. And long story short, when I first was able to start affording some nice watches, I actually started getting into watches a little bit. And if you guys have been watching me for a while and you saw some of my older really bad videos, you guys know that I have a massive bias towards in-house movements. And when I first started learning a little bit about Panerais, one of the things that I realized immediately back in the day, and this is about maybe late 2008, 2009-ish, when I first started getting into a place where I could actually afford them and learning about them. I realized at that point that they were basically just using ETA Bosches. They were using mostly derivatives of like a Unitas movement or the Valjoux 7750 sans all the chronograph features on it. And at that point, I was very much a person that thought that value was driven by the components of a watch, and that an in-house watch had way more value to me than a watch that used a just generic, as I thought back then, Valjoux movement. And I'll never forget, I was in Tournai one day and I had spoken to the local sales guy, Michael, a really cool guy, and basically talked about a couple watches I was interested in. And he said, by the way, I got a Panerai in. He brought out a Rolex Submariner for me. He brought out a Rolex Explorer 2, the 16570 and the 16610 respectively, both black dial. But he knew that I'd mentioned in passing through some of the time that we knew each other that I had an interest in Panerai, and he mentioned that he got one in. And he himself had just picked up a really nice PAM as well. And he brought it out, and I just remember looking at the Panerai and thinking, my god, this is such a cool watch. But I also remember sitting there thinking, at the time I think the watch, I don't remember exactly what PAM he had, but I remember at the time the watch was a little over $5,000. It was used, and actually they were going to put a generic strap on it too. The original strap was already gone on it. And I remember looking at the countertop, and I remember seeing the Rolex Explorer 2, black dial, was like $4,800 at the time. The Submariner was like $5,250, and the Panerai was like $5,500. And I remember thinking, I'm gonna go spend more money on a watch with some generic Valjoux movement when I can have a Rolex. And I kept thinking, why would I, buy a Panerai when I can have a Rolex? And so that day I ended up, picking the Rolex Submariner, which, truthfully in retrospect was probably my least favorite of the three. I really like the Explorer 2, and as you guys know, if you follow me, I own one now. Love the Explorer 2. At that time I thought I was too good for one. I thought the sub would have better resale, and I had in-house movement, and I was sold. And, I walked away from there kind of thinking, Panerai spoke to me, and it was, maybe that I make the wrong decision. And I remember too, just started seeing Panerais around, like people that I knew that were really successful. I would see, people pulling up in, really nice cars, people that I knew, and they'd have a Panerai on their wrist. And all of a sudden they went from being this really, really rare watch to a bunch of people that I knew all of a sudden having Panerais. And, at that point, I was just thinking, not only are they using, these generic Valjoux movements, but now everybody and their mother is buying a Panerai. it kind of, at least where I grew up, it went from, you had to be in the know to know what a Panerai was, to overnight, everybody who's trying to be trendy has a Panerai. You turn the TV on, everybody was wearing a Panerai. There was constant celebrity sightings that were wearing Panerais. And it's like, it went from being this kind of scarce, special thing that I appreciated but didn't really want to spend the money for, to this ubiquitous status piece that, all the people that were wearing them, I weren't people that I really wanted to hang out with. And for the longest time, I actually kind of totally lost interest in the brand. I thought they were just generic, Me Too stuff, and they were part of Richemont at that point. And it's like, just some other generic luxury brand. They have really no reason to be expensive. They're just generic value movements, and people are buying them as status symbols, and they're junk. Was kind of where my brain was going with it at this point. But in the very back of my mind, there always was a little bit of this kind of emotional attachment and thinking that they were really cool pieces, and there was still a part of me that really wanted to own them. And then they went in-house, they started doing their in-house calibers, and I remember looking at those when they first started coming out. I heard issues with power reserves, and I heard issues with servicing, and I actually mentioned some of that as well on my Are Panerais Any Good video, which I wouldn't recommend you guys watch. It's not that great of a video. But at that point too, even the in-house calibers were having issues, at least from the stuff I was reading online. I read a couple blogs and I'm like, oh, I don't want to touch this stuff either. And so I kind of avoided the brand for a good 10 years. It started off with this romance. So the first time I ever saw one, I kind of fell in love, and it was just a total emotional connection to the way the watches looked for me. And then I, slowly but surely over time just got sick of them and just didn't like them at all. But as you guys have seen in this channel, my videos have hopefully matured a little bit. My understanding has. I've become more open-minded to people repurposing at the calibers, or La Manna calibers, not just doing everything completely in-house. And, I kind of forgot what watch collecting is all about. And part of the reason that I had an issue with Panerai, I think, shows how much that I kind of went astray. I fell in love with Panerai because I fell in love with the story. I thought, what is it, Giovanni or Guido? I can't remember. Giovanni, Panerai. The brand I think was founded like in 1860. It was this great little Italian brand in Firenze. It had a really cool story. The story was something that I thought was really appealing to me. I know a lot of you guys ask me what my heritage, is. I'm an American, but I have a lot of Italian heritage. I actually come from a reasonably famous Italian family, although I'm several generations removed. Actually, the old name of my channel used to be a tie to my Italian roots, but that's a whole other story. But I forgot what watch collecting is all about. And, the reason I was drawn to Panerai in the first place was the right reason. It was a watch that looked really cool to me. I loved the history of it and my Italian heritage of it. I looked at the watch and it reminded me of family that I have, some of my Italian family, some of my Italian roots, and it was an emotional bond. And I lost track of that when I went through this whole period of hating them. And now that I've kind of gone through some maturation in my collection, I went through the period where I sold all my Rolexes off and all my other high-end watches, and I went strictly to Seiko, and then I slowly started incorporating other pieces back into my collection. I found a place for Panerai within my watch collection again. So as some of you guys may be guessing, you're probably wondering why I haven't done a wristwatch shot for you today. Well, I posted something on Instagram, which, as a lot of you guys guessed when you saw the picture, it is a Panerai. I have finally added a Panerai to my collection. And I have to tell you, I'm ecstatic with the watch. And I know that it uses, I bought a older generation one because I actually wanted the ETA-based caliber now, the Value caliber, because I know it's really easy to get serviced. My watch uses an OP3. And I know that I can get it serviced, and I just love the way it looks. And so, of course, you're going to ask me which one it is. Well, I'm going to do an unboxing video of it coming up very soon, so I don't want to spoil too much, but it is on my wrist right now. And there's a brief little sneak peek of what it is, but I will do an unboxing for you guys. But the purpose of this video is that, again, I think I lost track of what watch collecting is all about, and maybe that's something you guys can relate to too. I got so concerned with the fact that everybody was wearing one and they became these status objects, and I was so concerned with the fact that they were using, basic movements in them, that I just thought they were overpriced mass market junk. But watch collecting is a passion, and you should be buying watches that you're passionate about, and that's something that I forgot. I got so focused on the details that I lost track of the passion itself. And every time I'm looking at this Panerai now, which you can't see yet, but you will, I promise, and I'll do a full review on it too, I'm reminded of my Italian heritage. I'm reminded of my Italian family and my roots. I feel the romance of them being founded in Firenze in 1860, and all the history, everything about it, the reasons that I originally got into watches, that history, that passion, that emotional connection. This watch has it for me. And I now understand why there's some people out there that legitimately like them, and I can tell you now that I'm a happy owner of a Panerai. So hopefully you guys appreciated this video. As always, guys, I'd love to hear your stories of watch collecting and how you guys may potentially relate to this video. As always, if you like the video, please give me a thumbs up. As I mentioned, I am going to be launching a video very soon of a Panerai unboxing. I'm going to show you just the unboxing of this watch just so you guys can see how it came. The packaging is incredible, honestly. Probably the best that I've seen in quite a while. The only thing I'd say comes close to is the box that my Rolex Daytona came in with a 4130. That was a beautiful mahogany box, but tangent. But if you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. If you want to stay tuned into my future videos and you haven't already, please do a subscription for me. Somewhere around my head, there's going to be a subscribe button. I appreciate your subscriptions as always. I always appreciate your comments. May not get a chance to respond to them all, but I try to read as many as I can, and you guys, I am so thankful for you all. So thank you guys so much. Stay tuned for the next video. Plenty more content coming your way. I'm doing my best to give you guys better and better content. We're going to try to get more watches on the channel, and I'm going to try to keep it as interesting as possible for you guys. So stay tuned, and I hope you're having a great day. Take care.